What is the worst case of attention seeking you've ever seen? I was a bridesmaid in a childhood friend's wedding a few years back. Other than me and one other woman, the maid of honor, the other 4 bridesmaids were newer friends and coworkers of the bride. One of them was the worst human being I ever met in my life. I'll refer to her as Jane. Not her real name, obviously. Anyway, Jane persuaded the bride that the bachelorette party needed to be a weekend away to a city that is well known for bars and partying. It was a 10-hour car ride from the bride's city, so we road tripped. I'll summarize the trip in bullet points. After collecting everyone, we pick up Jane last. We were even 45 minutes later than we said we'd be, and when we enter her house, she is standing there in her underwear eating a cold taco, and we realize she is hungover and hasn't even packed yet. This delays us another hour. On the trip there, she, a grad school teacher, said that last year's students were so annoying that they gave her PTSD. Ha! Okay. I had suffered from PTSD after I was nearly killed once, so I was curious and asked her about it. She then nervously changes the subject when she realizes she's been called out. She says some really horrible racist stuff, and then looks around the car to see what people's reactions were. We get to our hotel around dinner time. We decide to eat and then get ready to go out at night. The rest of us throw on casual clothes, then we have to wait for her. She gets so overly done up and wears heels and cakes on 3 inches of makeup. She looks like a damn fool next to the rest of us. We Uber to our first bar. We're there like maybe an hour. The place is filled with extremely beautiful young women, and Jane is clearly eyeballing all of them and is notably self-conscious. A little while later, we leave and walk to the next bar. Me and one other realize we've separated from the rest of the group, so we backtrack and find them trying to hail a cab to go home. What's going on? I ask. Jane said she was sick, so everyone else decided to call it a night. It's like 10 p.m. on a Friday. We get back to the hotel room. Surprise! Jane is all better. She does an obscene amount of shots and gets super shitty drunk. Then she puts on her new bikini and parades around the room, saying things like, "Does this make my butt look big? I think this color looks bad on me. I am so ugly." And everyone else is like, "No, you're beautiful, you look good." I seem to have been the only one who could see she was clearly fishing for compliments. Saturday was full of big plans for the bride. We go to the bride's favorite bar, a country bar, and are there maybe 30 minutes. It's the most fun 30 minutes of the whole trip. All of us are dancing and having a great time. Jane is seated at a table and just pouts the whole time and bitches about how she hates country music. So we leave and go somewhere else, but she somehow manages to convince the bride that it was her own idea to leave. The rest of the night is awful. She manipulates the bride into doing certain things that clearly were just activities she wanted to do. Then if anyone else protests, she is like, "How dare you? This is the bride's special day." The night culminated with a huge fight in the middle of the dance floor in a super trashy club. Most of us weren't even tipsy because we didn't feel comfortable enough to drink for most of the night. During this fight, the maid of honor says something about how the bride doesn't look like she's having fun at all and suggested we go back to the other bar. Jane shoots everyone's ideas down. So we awkwardly try to have fun and recover from the fight. It's genuinely awful. We get back to our suite and Jane, the bride, and 2 others lock themselves in their bedroom, leaving just the maid of honor and myself in our room. We can hear them gossiping in there all night. After the trip, maid of honor gets a phone call and is downgraded to a regular bridesmaid. Bride says, "Things that were said over the weekend were really hurtful to me." Maid of honor is extremely confused as they seem to have gotten along really well the whole time and honestly has no clue what she said. Maid of honor and I figure out it was some lie that Jane had told the bride. She decides she is not going to participate in the wedding at all, since it was going to cost her upwards of $1,000 for travel, accommodation, etc. I stick to my commitment since I am still neutral in all this. Wedding happens a few months later. Surprise! Guess who the new maid of honor is? At rehearsal, she shows up and is so overly made up again. She is even wearing a white dress. Bride looks visibly upset but is too shy to stand up for herself. Next day, we all get ready for the wedding. Jane finds out that her dress is too tight. She had it shortened and taken in so she could look extra trampy. Look like a damn sausage in the thing. And she can't bend down to adjust the bride's train. It takes every ounce of energy for me not to bust out laughing. Someone else had to then be emergency maid of honor. Jane gets super sloshed at the reception, makes an ass of herself hitting on every groomsman, who all happen to be married and attending with their spouses. She then yells in the middle of the dance floor during a quiet song, "They are all a bunch of gay fucks." There were so many other little things I could have written, but I had to end this post somewhere. She clearly had some major demon she was battling, and losing to, and it seemed like every action she took was just done in an attempt to gain attention from people. After this, I saw the movie Bridesmaids, and it was even more funny to me because so much of it was so relatable. In this case, though, the character of Helen was played by a shallow, manipulative, Xanax-fueled bimbo. Knew a dude who is a pathological liar. Some highlights included stolen valor, claimed he was the only survivor from his Alpha, Bravo, whatever special forces squad, where he was the squad leader, made up elaborate stories about training, missions, you name it. Even got pissed off and accused legitimate soldiers of stolen valor. He even had some real vets convinced. Of course, whenever he was offered a job pertaining to his vet status, asked about going to the VA, or was put in a situation where his military papers were required, he had a convenient inconvenience come up. All of his teammates died, and in all of his moves, he lost any documentation backing up his claims. Hypochondria. He did have one legitimate painful disease, but he chose to go all out by adding in a history of seizures, migraines, and a cervical fusion from a failed halo jump from one of his missions. See above. He'd be in the shower for an hour or doubling over in pain, rocking back and forth, casually mentioning, "I had a seizure the other night, but you were asleep. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to scare you." Turns out he did hurt his neck a long time ago, but it was due to an obese patient falling on him when he was an EMT. Munchausen syndrome. He couldn't go 1 week without getting a new injury, ranging from some scrapes or a large gash on his arm, or showing up to my dad's cut and bloodied. Superficial to the point where he wouldn't bleed out, but enough to garner attention, sympathy, or pity, and have us take him to the hospital. A lot of this happened when nobody else was around, so I suspect he was doing it to himself, especially considering his family told me that they've seen him break a glass bottle over his own head and piss himself to fake having a seizure. Made up stories. Goes hand in hand with him being alone. All these wounds came from being jumped or being beat up, etc. More than once on the phone, he said to me, "I have to go. There's a group of guys following me," which would scare the shit out of me, and I'd be on edge until he told me he was okay. Lied about wanting to commit suicide. Even told me that he had written everyone's goodbye notes. Not true. A few years prior, when he lived with his family, he and his wife always threatened to kill themselves, and he wrote a goodbye note to his 2-year-old son and placed it for his family to find. Made up tales about being a stripper in Canada, going to school to be a physician in Detroit, his entire military career, betting 20-plus ladies, almost getting into an art school for his innovative design, being abandoned by his family and raised by his grandmother, living in the campground secretly after his return from the military, etc. Last, had one job as a contractor but lied to friends about having that job, as well as being a physical trainer and looking at bars to be a bouncer. Playing the sympathy card from all angles. Would tell one person he didn't want to be a full-time father while telling another kid-loving person he couldn't imagine anything less than having full-time custody. Telling his girlfriend that he hadn't been happier in years and loved even just staying in with her, while complaining to buddies that she was plain, boring, and lamented that they didn't go out to party every day. Tried to get everyone to be on his side because his crazy junkie wife just left him for some junkie ex-boyfriend, when in reality he too was also a junkie, who was the one who got the crazy wife hooked on drugs. Dude was legit crazy. Attention whore incarnate. I went to high school, 250 students total, with this kid who was a bit of a loner and had a reputation for being a pathological liar. In college, my friends and I began to notice these beautiful girls writing to him on his Facebook wall. At first, it struck us as odd, but we left it alone. As weeks passed, our news feeds continued to be flooded with new girls we had never heard of flirting with him. So we started to get curious. Some of us have known this kid our entire lives, and we could count the number of times he spoke to girls on one hand. We later discovered that he had created 30 to 40 fake Facebook profiles with completely fabricated backstories and stole pictures of real women he found on the internet. He would carry out conversations with himself by posting from all the fake female accounts multiple times a day on his wall about fake parties, hangouts, etc., and respond from his own account. After this happened, he closed his Facebook account. We later found out he had become a gambling addict and spent time in a mental institution. Eventually, he moved to another city and got a job. He refriended all of his high school classmates, including me, and from what I see, he seems pretty happy. It took him a while, but I'm glad things worked out for him in the end. After skimming through the comments, it seems many people suspect that his happy ending is also fabricated. So I'll fill you in on what I know. I have no idea if the life he portrays on his current profile is fake, but if I had to guess, I would say it's real. It is too ordinary to be fake, unless he's some sort of Facebook profile faking mastermind. Here is a more detailed version of his history. After this whole facade with the fake Facebook profiles, he emerged on Facebook a couple of years later. It turned out that he had moved to a new city and got a new job. He only posted about his new obsessions, working 100+ hour weeks, working out on a daily basis, and cooking healthy meals. All the fake Facebook friends were gone. In fact, no one posted on his wall at all. Then he deleted his profile again and returned a year later. This time, his posts were only about his new puppy and girlfriend. Though I believe he had a girlfriend because she was in the pictures with him. I suspect he made up a story about losing his puppy. The long work days, workouts, and cooking were never mentioned again. He then deleted his profile again and returned to what is now his current profile. He posts about his new obsessions: economics, the oil industry, and his dog. His girlfriend is not there anymore. He doesn't seem to have many friends or a life outside of his job. When I said earlier that he seems happy, I meant that as a relative term. He is no longer lying or seeking validation from the people around him. He isn't using Facebook as a tool for attention anymore. Now he just posts his thoughts about the previously mentioned subjects. He seems much more content being in his own skin. I can't help but simultaneously feel sorry and happy for him. It's so conflicting. Probably too late to the party, but I worked with a crazy attention-seeking woman for about a year. Keep in mind, this is a 40-something-year-old mother of two. Highlights: this woman and myself were two of about 5 females in the entire company of nearly 100. She played the "I'm just one of the guys" card by trying to talk about cars and other stereotypical manly topics that she obviously didn't know. Worst of all was the need to make sexual jokes that were just so desperate. It got to the point where she would inquire about everyone's meats at lunch, making as many references to penises as possible. They didn't even make sense. If you were eating anything crunchy, she'd have to make some reference to nuts, as in ball sacks, every single day. Any possible connection to drama became her personal tragedy. The best example is when a friend of hers had a daughter studying abroad in rural France during the Paris attacks. She was inconsolable until someone else made some sort of comment containing sexual innuendo. See above. Then she was all right. Personal injury. One time she fell in a parking lot and sent half the staff a very close-up cell phone pic of her knee. It was a scrape. She took the rest of the day off. She also got into a fender bender and milked it for all it was worth, including a statement that she needed to learn to walk and talk again at physical therapy. One-upping. We dress up for Halloween in office. Everyone wears something low-key that they can still work and function in. Her first Halloween with the company, she rented a Cruella de Vil costume and paraded around all day. Didn't do any work. Annoying, but not too alarming. For our annual ugly Christmas sweater day, however, she showed up with a cat shirt. Not a sweater at all, or Christmas related. And those galaxy and space pattern spandex pants. And real cat toys. Those colorful little mice. Hot glued all over them. All day she complained about nobody went all out like she did. All day she complained about how nobody went all out like she did. She got fired a few months later for basically not even pretending to work. Now she's a high-level manager for one of our competitors. This should be interesting. Girl claims she had lung cancer with only a week to live. Got into school the next Monday saying she was miraculously cured over the weekend. Girl bandaged up her hand, palm, and told people she tried to slit her wrist but missed. The most messed up part was this girl was heavily into first aid and Halloween, so when she wore the same dirty bandage for a week that was caked in blood, but insisted on not changing it, it became transparent. Edit. She was a lifeguard, so she took multiple first aid courses, causing her to think she was just as certified as someone in a clinic or hospital. Halloween was her favorite holiday, so she would go full out every year and buy tubs of fake blood. A girl got super jealous over this guy seeing someone else, so she tried saying she got HIV from him so he would talk to her, but he knew it wasn't true, so she pulled the pregnant card on him. Witnessed a girl from afar fake fall while her friends' backs were turned. People faking drunk. Few more for you. Night sleep helped me brainstorm. A girl with a very poor lifestyle tried to explain that it was because she was Princess of China and all her luxuries were back home. My friend's girlfriend needs attention 24/7. She'll take him away from his friends and family or go off on her own and sulk until he comes to her. The longer he takes to approach her, the worse the argument. If he has the slightest bit of attention drawn to someone or something else, she will continuously poke him or repeat his name. Yes, like a child on a road trip. She can't do anything for herself. He pays for everything, drives her everywhere, lets her stay at his family home while he's not around, so she just eats and uses their internet, doesn't clean up after herself. So I've concluded their relationship is like a father and daughter. A guy gave a girl a few grades older a bouquet of flowers and asked her to dance. After kindly rejecting him, which caused the crowd to lose interest in the event, she got all upset, started crying in class, and went home. My sister. She has always had a screw loose, just very loopy and immature for her age. Example, she was like 16 before she crossed the street by herself, and my parents just enabled her. But when she went off to college, everything got a lot worse. She came up with this lie that she has lived her life by, that I, her brother, was some sort of abusive asshole to her entire life. And she told everyone that if God is good, I'm going to hell. A couple months later, she came home for Thanksgiving and she blatantly refused to be in the same room as me. And let's say I would walk into the kitchen while she was making something with mom or my grandmother. She would literally scream and duck behind the counter. Then at dinner, when I sat down at the table with the whole family, she screamed that she wouldn't sit at the same table as me and was just being a huge attention seeker. It was absolutely ridiculous. Everyone knew that she wanted attention and she has driven away several roommates who told the RA that she's crazy because of her tendencies. You know how young children, usually preschoolers, will tend to be the mother hen of a group of other children and constantly overcorrect and nag at them in order to feel bigger and more important? It's usually some kind of developmental thing I see happen often, usually in 3 to 4-year-old girls with little siblings. I have a nearly 30-year-old cousin who never stopped doing this, and it is like nails on the chalkboard of my mind. If you paraphrase something that has happened on the news, she'll overhear and shrill, "Actually, they said blank." back. Or if you're telling a story about something that happened, she'll correct your grammar even if nothing is wrong with it. She always has to have the last word in every single conversation, complete with interrupting you while you are speaking. She also tries to pick fights in social situations like a preteen girl, repeating something awkward you may have said earlier super loudly on accident in front of others, complete with a smirk and a fake shocked expression. It's just awful, and she does this to every woman she encounters. My dad's second wife paid someone to write a biography about her mundane life, in which she tried to drag me, my siblings, and my mom through the dirt. Then she started handing out copies to as many people as she could. She also runs to my dad to cry about my sister regularly because my sister calls her out on her shit. She's constantly negative about people to hide her own insecurities. She generally can't stand not being the center of attention, and she will steer any conversation to be about her or her children. Cleaning lady at a hospital, married with 2 kids, divorced, and then she met my dad. What a life. For the people telling me to sue for slander or libel or whatever, that's not going to work. I don't live in America. There has to be provable damage done, which some dumb books gathering dust don't do. And suing would cost way more in money in my relationship with my dad than a court case could ever get me. This was in my early 20s. I would work with the young coworkers in the most laborious part of the company. Women were also there. We would all hang out after work. Good group of friends, except for one girl. She kinda interrupted conversation she wasn't involved in. I knew she was self-centered, but I didn't care until the day she got fired. One of the girls in the group got engaged and everyone was happy for her, retelling and rehearing the way he proposed over and over since it was quite adorable. She had a face of jealousy. Suddenly, we don't see her. Then one break, we check our phones and she said that she's going to kill herself. We show our manager, she panics and sends me to check on her, track her down. I find her in her house eating chips and watching TV. She was fired for abandoning the job. My sister-in-law's cousin is hot. Everyone agrees, there's no denying it. When she walks into a room, all eyes turn to her. She's always got guys fawning all over her. She has plenty of attention, deserved or not, at all fucking times. When my brother got married, this girl, my sister-in-law's cousin, decided to wear a huge, frilly white dress with a hat and veil. She kept barging into places moments before my sister-in-law, excusing herself for causing confusion. I wanted to punch her face. I wasn't the one getting married. I'm a guy, and I still wanted to fucking punch this woman's face. My friend's wife died unexpectedly. His mother immediately began posting photos on Facebook of him having clearly cried himself to sleep, tissues strewn on the pillow, face streaked with tears. Caption them with shit like, "So sad, missing wifey, I got you, baby boy." Pictures of the pets and captions about how sad they were too. Photos of her posing at her dead daughter-in-law's gravesite, etc. She eventually began posting several times a day, thanking God for giving her the opportunity to help her son raise her grandkids. I'm surprised she didn't lick the tears from his eyes. It was sick. It was a couple of years ago, but there was this whole news story about these parents who had a weather balloon in their backyard, and supposedly one of their kids had gotten into the balloon and set it off. The parents were all worried because their kid was supposedly in the balloon. Well, once the balloon eventually landed, there was no kid. And it turns out that the kid was hiding in their basement the whole time. It was later figured out that it was all a hoax, and that the parents did it to get attention. This was me. My cousin was visiting from Korea. I was 8, he was 6. We were sitting around my mother on the floor watching her sew something. She couldn't find a piece of string she had pre-cut. She asked us to look around ourselves for the string. My cousin was sitting on it. He handed it to her and said, "It may be smelly, I farted on it." My mom laughed and said, "Haha, you're so funny." I got jealous, so I forced a fart out but shat my pants instead. My mother didn't laugh.